Okay, so this is very exciting for me because it's my first Zoom, and the first person I get to interview, well, my Zoom interview, is my gorgeous friend, Ashley McAvey. And the reason why is because she's done something monumental. I say she has an incredible team and she'll share that with you. But she has done something monumental, and she, very much like me doing Breaking Their Silence, layperson, right? Layperson from the ground up. And yet what she has achieved is remarkable. And we just touched on the fact that she did it in 2020. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend, Ashley McAvey. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Kerry. Thank you so much. I'm so honored not only to be interviewed, but to be your first Zoom interviewee. This is very flattering.
First of all, I want you to tell, I'm lucky because I know so much about you now. We've become sisters on this journey together. But I'd love you to tell anyone who's listening about yourself, not about the issue right now, which we'll get to, but just you yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Yep. So I'm a mother of two beautiful kids. I've got a great husband. I live in Shelburne, Vermont. And I am passionate about wildlife. Before kids, I was involved in development. I did fundraising professionally. I have my master's from Yale School of Environment. So wildlife environment have always been very important to me. But I definitely took a pause when I had my kids. And then a 2012 National Geographic cover story really was the catalyst that got me where I am with you right now.
Okay, let's dive right in then. So you saw what on the cover of National Geographic?
So it was an incredibly kind of heartbreaking cover. It was really a call to arms, and it talked about how bad the poaching crisis was. I had the incredible good fortune and blessing to go to Africa when I was just 16. And I bottle fed orphaned black rhinos, and I met amazingly beautiful, courageous rangers who I know you have met and fallen in love with as well. And it just, the dots all clicked in that trip that these animals were getting wiped off the planet, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake, taking livelihoods of tourism, just on every single level. It was an atrocity. And it was because of what was happening in this very country. So for so long, it was just always kind of point the finger at Asia. And I learned then, even back in 1989, 1990, that this country was a huge culprit in this extinction crisis. So that kind of stayed with me for a long time. And I just truly, I studied it in college and in graduate school. I hoped it would go away, but it was that 2012 article that said it's as bad as it's ever been. And I read it and I said, I have to do something.
So let's connect those two dots. It's very surprising to audiences when you tell them that America is number 2 in the world for responsible for this. I noticed your interview recently with the Shelburne News, you say that America is the leading country now. It may have changed since I had done my research because it's been a couple of years. So can you talk to that? Because people, like you say, they point the finger at Asia, and it's all about supply and demand. So talk about the demand that America has, and then let's jump right into what you were forced into action to do.
Right. I mean, a lot of times it was originally China. China's the leading culprit, villain, if you will, in the ivory industry. And then the US was always considered a top market for sure. I mean, that's irrefutable. But in some of my more recent research, there have been sources indicating that the US is the largest market for the illegal wildlife trade. And that, when people think about the illegal wildlife trade, it's important to know that stands right up there with the worst illegal trades in the world. It's the 4th largest illegal trade after drugs, humans, and arms and or counterfeit. So we're talking a multi-billion-dollar trade that is happening in this country in a huge way. So whether you want to argue is it the number 1 or the top 3, it's a huge player. In terms of ivory, because China has actually taken very big steps to stop the trade. Japan is now listed as number one for ivory. So now there's a lot of focus on getting Japan to do the right thing and shut down the trade. But it was that notion that it's so easy to point fingers, and it's so easy to just say, no, those bad people, when in fact there was so much misinformation about here. So I mean, I can't do much around the world. Although that's debatable, because look at what you've done around the world. So, but in terms of, okay, what can this country do? It was like a light went off that we are a huge villain here and we need to do something. And I had to act.
So it's not so unique that you went to a meeting that talked about how can we get a handle on it. What is unique is what happened after that meeting and what you were then forced into doing. And that to me, where you became Superwoman. So let's dive into that. So you obviously saw it with the magazine and you're like, right, I want to do something. And you went to a local meeting. Take it from there.
Exactly. So I read the story. It was written by Brian Christie, who is one of the lead investigative journalists for National Geographic. And I call him a good friend. In fact, he wrote a beautiful letter to Governor Scott when this bill was sitting on his desk. So talk about full circle. I read this article written by this incredible guy, and he's become a friend, and he was helping me write letters of support to the governor. So I read the article, I hung on every word, and I said, okay, what can I do? And I realized the article was written, this is where film and the power of film comes into play. The article was written around an actual documentary that was being filmed at the time by National Geographic, directed by John Hemingway. So I reached out to a friend from my boarding school. I went to Deerfield Academy because I knew that he had been a backer of the film. I mean, this is a really long-winded story, but I got in touch with him, and he said, call John Hemingway. John's my friend. I supported the film because John was doing it. And I got in touch with John. I thought, there's no way this guy is going to get back to this person, this mother in Vermont and he got right back and he said, let's do it. I'm hooked up with Wildlife Conservation Society, which is an amazing organization. So kind of the three spokes of the wheel, John Hemingway, Wildlife Conservation Society, and I just made it happen. And I put together a screening of his film. John flew out from Montana, and it was a completely packed house at the University of Vermont, where I used to work, in their School of the Environment, in the Rubenstein School, which is an amazing school. And I had called the dean, who was a friend. I worked with him, and I said, John, another John, can we do this? And he said, yes. He didn't hesitate. So boom, the event happened, hosted by UVM in conjunction with Wildlife Conservation Society, and John flew out. We had a panel discussion after. And really the upshot of that panel discussion was, everybody in the audience, a lot of college students, a lot of just all walks of life, every age, everything. Everyone's kind of wringing their hands. Okay, what are we doing after watching this beautiful film, being completely inspired? And the key word at the end of that panel was legislation. And I thought, okay, that's good. And then I thought, somebody else can do it because I had just, done this big event, and it was amazing and fulfilling. But I thought, okay, I kind of said, it'll just happen. Somebody's going to run with this. And nobody did. It kind of kept me up at night that nothing is happening. So that's when I said, we're going to run with this. With Vermont right now, it's a perfectly legal thing to buy and sell ivory, rhino horn, any of these imperiled wildlife parts. And so I had to educate myself, and then I had to get 2 sponsors for our first bill. And I did. I got a Republican and a Democrat, because this is a completely nonpartisan issue and it needs bipartisan support. And we were off and running.
So knowing nothing about how to write legislation, you just
literally
decided, I'm going to do this, right? I mean, I'm going to stop and pause right here, because I think this is where ordinary people think it's above my pay grade. I don't understand this, or I can't do that. We can do extraordinary things when we really are driven to by our passion. You can't just write a bill. No. What is the process of writing a bill?
No. So the good news and the really lovely thing for Vermont was that we weren't the first. I would like to say we were the first. We were the first state to ban slavery back in the 1700s. So I love that Vermont has this incredible legacy of being the first. We were the first with civil unions. We're trendsetters for what is right and just in the world, and for peace and justice. And so that's good, but that also makes it hard. If you're the trendsetter, and especially in any legislative body, the first question is, well, who else has done this? Why are we the first? And luckily for us, New Jersey had already done it, and so had New York and California. So New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie in 2014, he was the first governor, and a Republican governor. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is bipartisan. He signed a bill into law, and the New Jersey bill had no exemptions. So didn't matter if it was an old piano or antique and candidly, I've spoken firsthand, one-on-one with Fish and Wildlife agents who actually testified on behalf of our bill to say that that is the cleanest way to do a bill. If you want to really cut down on any loopholes, you make it clean the way New Jersey did. Really, it was finding a Republican and a Democrat who could come together as co-sponsors of a bill. And then they had legislative council copy what New Jersey had done. And that was our first bill. That was H297. So we had it, it was started, but then the challenge was, okay, how do we really make this a grassroots movement? We did this with $0. So it was really an education campaign. What really started was going around to schools, colleges, newspapers, letters to the editor, you name it, marches, movie screenings, and really letting folks know that right now, Vermont, pretty little nice Vermont, is part of the problem because it's completely legal to buy and sell all of these products. And when you said that to people, their jaws dropped. They said, no, it's not. And we had to say, yes, it is. So that was the push. It was this idea that there was a huge misunderstanding that federal law governs what happens on a state. It doesn't. Federal law only governs import, export, and interstate trade. But intrastate trade, the trade that happens within a state's borders, that is solely up to the state itself. So if the state doesn't have a law against it, it's perfectly free and clear. And the notion that we were trying to convey was, when you think about what's coming into this country on a daily basis, you think of those miles and miles and miles of cargo ships. There's no way we're going through every item. And so Interpol estimates that only 10% of illegal items are actually stopped, which means 90% of these imperiled wildlife parts are winding up free and clear on the state level. So it was this kind of, and that's not a soundbite. So we had to really take our time letting people get this fact and understand how this was so important on a state by state level.
So you started a nonprofit, Vermont for Wildlife, correct? Is that what you did it back then? And then you slowly gathered this momentum behind you. I mean, because I know you, I know how much energy you have, and I know what a phenomenal mom and wife you are. So I know how tired I get at the end of the day, and I really cannot conceive just what it took for you to do this, because you didn't give up. So you spent 4 years trying to pass this bill. What happened when you finally put it forward that first term?
What happened for me, which is good, and I bet it would happen for you too, because I know you. We had H297, and we pushed hard, and I think, to your point of, why didn't you just give up? It was almost like the more there were opponents or people who didn't understand, or people who were spreading false information, the more I dug in my heels. So the more I actually wanted it, especially as I was seeing slowly but surely other states were ticking by and doing the right thing. So back to H297, we started. It's funny because for such a simple idea, there was opposition. I mean, I think anytime you tell somebody that you're not allowed to do something, there's this very gut reaction of taking away a liberty or robbing somebody of their possessions, or so there was a lot of, we had to be very skillful in how we proceeded, and how we really were trying to say, this is, with knowledge comes the responsibility to act. So nothing's going to get confiscated. We're just saying, as long as this trade continues, the monetary value on these items, that is perpetuating the slaughter.
Right.
So H.297, we overwhelmingly passed the House. I think it was 135-4. So wonderfully great news and wonderful. But I should say, along the way, again, because at this point it was only maybe 3 or 4 states had done it. It was getting watered down, and that can happen with legislation, is it gets watered down pretty quickly. So actually, by the time it got to Senate, to be honest, it wasn't a great bill. It probably at the time would have been the weakest in the country. And that's something that you really have to be careful for with state legislation, because whatever the lowest kind of common denominator is, very frequently the next state that does it and all the states following will kind of copy that, because all the other states, they'll say, well, oh, but Vermont did it. New Jersey was crazy. They had no exemptions, but Vermont, they had all these exemptions and loopholes. So let's do it like Vermont. And truly at that point, we would have been doing more harm than good. So the Senate actually had even suggested creating a registry, which would have been completely cumbersome, and more than cumbersome. It would have done more harm than good. It would have been putting almost a higher value if you said, oh, but I registered this piece of ivory, so it's really valuable. So we actually had to pull the plug. We were the ones who said, this is not what we want. It's defeating the whole purpose. So and it was very painful. I mean, I cried a lot, and to have that much effort put in to actually for us ourselves to have to pull it out was painful, but boy, it was worth it. It really was.
So did you pull out before it went before the Senate, or did they say no to the House passed?
Nope. That's a very good question. Nope. We were trying in the Senate to strengthen it. So that's the other thing. Until a bill is signed, there's lots of time for it to be weakened or strengthened. So our hope when it went from the House back in 2016 to the Senate was that we could strengthen it. Mm-hmm. And that was our hope. But as I said, it actually, it worked the other way. It got even more watered down in the Senate. And again, they had proposed this registry idea. So we pulled it before it went to the governor's, but actually, technically, we pulled it before it even went to the full Senate, because everything starts in a committee.
Yep.
So we were only in the Senate committee. So before it even went to a full Senate vote, we said, nope, this isn't going to happen.
So that's after 4 years of work, which not only was it the hard slog that you did, but it's also the learning curve of what you're doing and the trial and error and trying to get people behind you. No money, 2 young kids, a husband, a house, not getting paid, trying to rally everyone in Vermont to get behind this incredibly important bill. And now you're back to square one. So most people would throw the towel in and say, okay, well, I tried. Okay, again, this is where it makes you superwoman, but I want to state again, this is not something that you had experience in. And what was it that got you to pick yourself up and say, okay, another 4 years, but I'm up for it and I'm going to do it bigger?
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, you're going to make me cry, because, these are such really poignant questions, and you're making me really think. So Vermont, the Vermont legislative body works on a biennium. So a bill has 2 years to try to make it from start to finish. So that was 2016 was when everything crashed. And we took a little break. I needed a break. I think the local media needed a break. They did an amazing job covering it. Like, nobody wanted to talk about Ivory. Like, everybody needed a break. So, we did. We took 2017, 2018. We stood back for that biennium, and then we came back full force. Okay. And to your question, what made me come back full force? It really was the moments along the way. I can't help. Oh, I didn't think you were going to make me cry. But I can't help but think about the little moments of joy and the little moments of hope and the little moments of light. And the kids of Vermont, you know, out of the mouths of babes, these little kids, you know, if you could just kind of take adults and like put them on the corner for a second and just talk to a child, and you say, you know, do you like looking at this elephant, you know, on National Geographic or in one of Kerry David's films? Do you like looking at this rhino? Do you like, and they'll say yes. And then you simply say, you know, they're being hunted, they're being killed for parts of their bodies, so that people can buy and sell them and make money. And these are animals that there are very few left. And so do you think we should do that or not? And kids will say, no, we shouldn't be doing that. So there was just this simple kind of drumbeat of these kids who just got on board. I mean, Tegan Yardley, who you met, we had breakfast together, the three of us, which was so fun.
So fun.
She sold cupcakes at that very first screening of Battle for the Elephants. And she was just this little girl who really cared. And she just had tenacity, and she didn't let it go. And she wound up making small, short little documentaries, which I'd be happy to give you and so you can put up as well. That went around the world. Yeah, they went, you know, literally they've been shown in embassies and governments. And so she got an award from Prince William for her efforts. So it was just these kids who really believed in this. And it wasn't just, oh yeah, I love elephants, I hope the bill passes. These were kids who stayed up late, who wrote testimony, who went to the State House in blizzards, who marched on Church Street, who told their friends. I mean, so, and then the teachers, these incredibly amazing teachers who not only heard what their kids were saying, but said, hey, well, why don't you see if Ashley McAvey can come in and talk to the class? And, you know, I'll help you hand out brochures about this issue at Healthy Living Supermarket. Like, you know, just so teachers, like the people who it's like, I can't hang up on this because there's so many people who are, it's too late. Like we're all in it. So it was really kind of honoring, just saying, we're gonna do this. And again, at this point, right, every year that went by, there were more states. So that's always helpful, very positive. Yeah. But at the same time, it's almost kind of sad. It's like, okay, Vermont, there's 11 states now. Are we going to be 39 or are we going to be 12? Right. And so, so we just regrouped. We came back in 2018. We changed our name. And again, just my little group, it was all volunteers. I mean, we're not even 501c3. We don't accept money. It was just this people, with a great website that Laurel Nemi helped put together, who's an incredible friend and partner on this journey. And then, obviously Barry Lundry with the Humane Society US, and then Brenna Galdenzi with Protect Our Wildlife. These are Vermont groups that just became like family in terms of this push. And so we did change the name. So formerly we were called Ivory Free Vermont, this kind of little group of volunteers that I've put together, which round out being over 400 people. So we changed the name because we decided, okay, when we come back in 2018, which we did, and actually I have to give all credit to Dr. Laurel Nemi, who I know you also know because you were on the panel with her after your film. So she's lovely and brilliant. And she was actually ahead of the game because she had said years before, she said, you know, I think we should do this. We should do a multi-wildlife species. Like this is going way, like at this point, things are getting so bad for so many species. I don't think we should just do elephants and rhinos. And, you know, when Ivory Free Vermont was really pushing, it was like, well, let's just stick to ivory and rhino horn. But Laurel had a lot of wisdom, and we all agreed, okay, this makes sense. And other states had started doing this multi-species bill. And so instead of just ivory and rhino. So
what did you expanded your bill, but what did you expand it to cover now?
Yep, to 15 species. So we had, you know, cheetah, pangolin, lion, whale, you know, hippo. I can send you the long list. 15 species of the most imperiled species. So people would say, well, why did you choose these particular species? And again, this is a bill that's battling wildlife trafficking. So the 15 species in the bill, going way beyond just elephants and rhinos, it's really looking at the most trafficked animals in the world, with pangolin, which your film so beautifully demonstrated, is the most trafficked mammal in the world. And some people didn't even know what that was. It's the most trafficked mammal.
Let's talk about stats, because I know 100 elephants are murdered every day so that we can wear their ivory teeth as bracelets. And that 3 rhino are killed every day for their horns, which, as we know, has no medicinal value whatsoever, but it has one of the highest black market costs associated with it of anything on the black market. I believe at one point, the only thing more expensive was weapons grade plutonium, which is preposterous but it tells you that's the power of PR, right? Somebody has sold this bill of goods to people who believe it. And now, of course, with the young, and this is Asian, unfortunately, but the young nouveau riche in Asia are now displaying the full horn as a status symbol, which of course is abysmal.
Right.
So well, one of the things I just want to say that I was noticing from the sidelines was that I was hearing from you and the monumental work that you were doing, and the constant letter writing, and they weren't short letters, they were important, vital letters to important people, and you never would let up. And I was so amazed at your stamina to keep doing this. And then it was shortly, I want to say maybe a couple months before you put the bill forward, and you got this crushing email from somebody on the inside saying, basically, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think, prepare yourself. Can you tell me about that moment? Do you know the email I'm talking about? Because you shared it with me. Yeah. Can you talk about that moment?
Yeah. I do. And yes, it was devastating. And I think it was right around June of 2020 when, even despite COVID, I mean, we were still, the legislative body was meeting via Zoom, and and things were happening. And we had gotten out of the House committee in mid-March. So kind of right before COVID really shut everything down. So it was kind of like, okay, well, what's happening here? And yes, what happened was the Vermont legislative body, it came to a well-deserved rest. I mean, they went way longer than, because of the pause, they had to come back. So the hard thing happened really was in June of 2020 when the session, these legislators, they've been working so hard trying to, as legislators around the nation and world have been trying to deal with this incredibly horrific pandemic and the consequences. They needed a break, so they took a break, but we hadn't gotten through the full House. So I did know that the legislative session was going to resume in August, but it was going to be for a month, a very, very, very tiny amount of time. And I thought, okay, well, where there's life, there's hope. So it wasn't dead, but I did get some emails from wonderful legislators, I mean, champions of this bill, who they just said, Ashley, I'm sorry. They said, we're done. And it's, we didn't get through the House, and it's going to be really hard to get through the full House, and then a Senate committee, and then the full Senate, and then to the governor's desk in a month. So I cried. And then I called Tim Ash, who I actually, I wrote, I mentioned him. His name was written in the article, the Shelburne News article. He was pro tem. So he was he was the leader of the Senate, and he is an incredible advocate for animals and wildlife. His record speaks for itself, and he's been very supportive of our efforts. But clearly he had a lot of other things on his plate. So, this wasn't really his baby, but he was wonderfully supportive. So when I called him in June and I just said, Tim, what do you think? he was very, very positive that, he didn't make any promises, but he was very positive that he would do what he could. And so I think what happened was when everybody came back after a little break to catch their breath in late August, there was groundwork that had been laid. Okay, we've come this far, and this person is clearly not going away. So let's just see what we can do. The other thing that I really, I was very grateful that legislators acknowledged was the zoonotic nature of this pandemic. So, a lot of people, there's people who would say, what are we doing with this anyway? What does this matter to Vermont? So that's a whole nother story. But then you'd also have people say, what are you doing, especially now during a pandemic? Right. And to that, the answer is really clear that this pandemic, it is irrefutable. It is caused by a zoonotic source. So if you look at the virus under a microscope, it has certain characteristics that can only be from a zoonotic disease and zoonotic illness. So, the fact is that it was exploitation of wildlife that got us here in the first place. I mean, you can debate, did it come from China? Did it come from Vietnam? Was it originally a bat and then the pangolin was the intermediary host, which is most likely, but you can debate those things all day long. But what you can't debate is that it jumped from wildlife to humans. That is irrefutable. And it is likely through our exploitation of wildlife that this happened. So if anything, it was like now more than ever is why we need to pay attention to how we're treating wildlife and how we're exploiting wildlife and the consequences to humans.
Right. Well, let's take a moment for that, because we can go back through history and we can talk about mad cow disease. We can talk about AIDS. We can talk about swine flu, aviation flu. What's that? The bird flu.
SARS, MERS, Ebola.
Yep. All originated with wildlife. Now, I know you and I are in accord on this, which is that we need to rethink our relationship to nature if humankind is going to survive. And some people think that's a dramatic statement, but it really isn't. And it wouldn't take a genius to sit down and say, but look what's happening while we don't. The wildlife that we love so much, we're pushing it to the brink of, they have nowhere else to go. This is the thing that makes me tear up. It's like, what are they supposed to do? Lately in India, there's been some photos of upset villagers setting fire to elephants, who you and I both know are sentient beings, and they're calves, because just to chase them out of the village. Now, while we could sit in judgment of that because we have such strong, passionate feelings about it, those villagers are doing it because they're protecting their livelihood. We come from different places, we understand. But what are these elephants supposed to do if they have nowhere to eat, nowhere to graze, nowhere to migrate to? They follow an instinctive pattern. Let's talk a little about, you had opposition from, I believe, an antique industry. Because the bigger argument is for humanity, and always the people on the other side it comes down to greed and money. Always, that's what it comes down to. But there's no stronger argument than to say, to save humankind, we also have to save wildlife. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yes. And I have to take a second to quote one of the women in your films when she so poignantly just said, she said, I think she was talking about the rhinos. They have every right to be here. Mm-hmm. They have just as much right to be here as we do. And it's so true. There's this arrogance. Of human kind of power, and we can wipe everything out to whatever whim that we have. And the thing about rhinos in particular, they've been around for 50 million years. Sudan, and I know that was extremely poignant and horrible for you on the film, gone on our watch. It's amazing. These animals have been here for 50 million years and gone on our watch. So when you think about the scale, it shows such urgency of what we have to do.
To that point, again, I want to say this because I know a lot of people will be wanting to write legislation for their state, and then we'll talk about that. But what's really vital is here that we are currently in the 6th greatest extinction right now, and we have lost 68% of our wildlife in the last 50 years. Yeah. If you let that sink in, people watching this have to understand that we're on full alert. I didn't make Breaking Their Silence because I'm a wildlife specialist. I made Breaking Their Silence because I am a layperson who wants to do everything that I can. And I know that the same was for you when you wrote that bill, was like you wanted to do everything that you could. And we're just asking everyone to do just that. That's all we're asking. Just do what you can. So yeah, go ahead.
No, 100%. And the idea of the sixth mass extinction. I mean, I love that you brought that up, because it's an extinction greater than the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And unlike the previous 5, this is caused by human activity. So, when you really think about that and what it means, there's a normal background rate of 1 to 5 species a year. That's normal. There's natural extinction. That's okay. But we're right now losing dozens every single day. Yeah. So when you really think about that, everybody has a responsibility. And so, you had asked about the opposition, and again, it was people who didn't want to be told what to do. And I think one of the best things in the world is that I have Ivory. I own Ivory that my grandmother gave me. So it wasn't like, I was saying, look, I own it too. Like, I own it too. I'm completely willing to keep it, give it to my children, pass it on, cherish it, love it, do whatever I want with it. But I understand I can't sell it anymore. And actually there was, I have to interject because it was so powerful. There actually was an antique dealer, I believe from Oregon, which is one of the states that had passed legislation. And he came on, and I thought, oh boy, what's he gonna say? And it was the most compelling argument for our bill. I mean, he said that once people understood why they were being told they could no longer buy and sell these items, they got it, they were okay, and the trade stopped there.
But so I actually pulled you off track for a little bit, because I'm just so passionate about the wildlife, as I know you are. But we talked about, so, here you had all this incredible momentum. You passed the House. No, you passed the Senate first this time, right? And then
this time, no, but actually that's a good question. We actually started in tandem. We passed the House first, but it's a very good question. So when we first started in 2019, we had 2 identical bills. So we had S29 and H99. So we had a Senate version and a House version. So we really kind of said, let's start them both, and let's see whichever one picks up first, we'll go with. But we wanted to have both bodies, both chambers engaged from the very start.
Smart, really smart. Yeah. And then I know, because you sent me that letter, and you're just like, all hands on deck. Everyone had to write letters, and which we did willingly, of course. And then let's talk about, well, is there anything that we haven't talked about the journey before we talk about the next steps?
No, I think we're covered. I think
we covered a lot.
Yeah, you're covering everything. I think this is good.
This is good. So then, of course, the most exciting thing, I get that call from you. We passed was it the House first, though?
Yes, it was.
This is what was so brilliant. I think I would have stopped my galvanizing people we passed the House, we're clearly going to pass the Senate, then the governor will sign and we'll all go home. I'm sure I would have stopped there. Not you. You were just like, you ramped it up. So you just kept going and going, and you pulled in all the big guns, and everyone wrote in. Then you passed the Senate again. I would have stopped there too. But then you really enlightened me, and you talked about the power of the governor's ability to veto both House and Senate. So talk a little bit about that whole situation, how you felt, where you were.
So in Vermont, Governor Scott had actually 3 options. He could, he could veto it, just say, nope, I don't like this at all. And governors do that. That's their job, and they're right. Governor Scott could have not signed it and let it kind of just become law, or he could have actively endorsed it by signing it. I know for a fact his office was flooded with international letters. I mean, I know for a fact were writing from all over the world. And a lot of people say, well, really, politicians, they only care about their constituents. They only care about who's voting for them. But I think this issue, the fact that it garnered such attention and such passion, I think it was a wonderful kind of learning opportunity for everyone in the governor's office to see how the whole world was watching little old Vermont. Yeah. And then also the other kind of wonderful side benefit was the fact that people out in California and in Nebraska and Oregon, they were reading about Vermont's crusade. So especially the states, the now 38 states that hadn't taken action, they were seeing these posts, and social media went crazy from all these wonderful partners who just jumped on board. And it was an education for a lot of people.
I love that. So then it goes before the governor, he signs it. How soon before you hearing he signed it, did you fall apart sobbing hysterically?
Yeah, and it was day 5, and it was after 6 p.m. and I was sitting at my computer where I had been for the last 3 weeks, not eating, not sleeping, just staring at my computer. And I got an email from somebody in his office just saying, I just want to let you know he just signed it. And so the fact that he signed it, it just made me so gratified, so happy that everything worked. And I think I even, I told you, we had a chat about it, how, you flying here to Burlington, Vermont and bringing your film, and, all the early mornings going on local television stations and the kids marching, it just, in that moment, everything was worth it. And you had asked about kind of the sacrifice of finding something that you're passionate about and seeing it through. When there is somebody did once say to me on this journey, they said, Ashley, I can't believe you're still doing this, because you don't know if it's going to work or not. And I remember I was shocked at that statement. I loved the person who said it, but I was really surprised, because I thought, that's such a pessimistic way to go through life. Like, of course there's no crystal balls. I don't know, but I hope. And if you have hope and you have faith and you just, you get to the point where you say, no matter what, I'm going to keep fighting. It becomes very, you don't get as stressed out, because you're going to do it. It's just how long is it going to take?
Yeah, because you can really apply that to anything in life. You don't do something because you know the outcome ever. Exactly. Like, you do something because you're driven to do something. Like that's really all anyone can ask of you. Yeah. Okay. So, and it did take a toll on your family, because how could it not? I mean, nights and days and weekends, and talk a little bit about the personal price that you paid.
I've schlepped my kids to that state house, in all sorts of weather. My son, he thinks that this victory has a lot to do with him, because he actually lost a tooth in the House committee, one of our House committee hearings, when I was delivering testimony. And I looked over and he had like this bloody, and I couldn't do anything. I said, I go figure it out. So, he's this little 9-year-old walking around the state house looking for an
ivory tusk for an ivory tooth. I mean,
that's what
perfect. He said. You know what? It's too perfect. I love it.
It is. That is exactly what he said. He literally said, it's ivory. And he was, and he was holding his stuffed animal, his shark, and sharks are one of the 15 species included in the bill. The sharks are being pummeled. I mean, so I think, and there was a lot of times, Mommy, can you come play Barbies, come play Legos? And I'd say, not yet. 1 minute, one more minute. And that was, 8 years of, my kids have always been my priority. And this was so important to me. And I think for them to see that, and then to see it come to fruition, again, it validated all those moments when I was busy. And so I think that's a really powerful lesson for children. Again, no matter what it is, for them to see their parents or their loved ones, their guardians, mentors, teachers, doing things that those adults believe in, because truly, not to sound corny, it's for the kids. I mean, if I didn't care about the future of the planet, I'd probably be, just having a tropical drink on an island. So, I mean, who cares? But I care greatly.
And a couple of things on that was just to see your parent take on something so huge, to see both the success of that, but the defeats along the way. I don't think there's any better lessons in life for a child to see that and understand that, yeah, sometimes you take the fall, but life is it's not about the falling down, it's about the getting back up again, and then seeing it through, regardless of the outcome. I mean,
Yes.
the outcome for you was hugely successful. I had a mantra when I was mostly in Africa, that when things weren't going well, and seemingly like you just think it's all going to fall apart, my mantra was trust in the process. Just trust in the process. Did you have one, and what was it?
Oh, I love that. I don't think mine was as succinct as those 4 words. However long it's going to take is how long it's going to take. And
I think sometimes when I talk about my film, you talk about this bill, it is all consuming, everything else falls, your friendships, your lovers, everything falls away. And it's just about getting this thing done. It's like a drive within you. You couldn't stop it if you wanted to, right? So at some point you do have to say it's perspective, like, okay, well, I'm not, this is not curing cancer, but you do need that perspective to sort of like get you out of bed sometimes, right? Just to keep going.
I think anything great that happens and any positive change in the world at any level, it takes people to get a little nuts over. I mean, I think if you're not obsessed with it, it's not going to happen. So when you look at any of the great movements or causes, or it's people who truly became, like you said, it was all consuming, and that's a good thing. It was a blessing that I didn't, nobody said I want to become obsessed with this thing, or but I'm grateful that I am, because any movement needs somebody who's losing sleep over it.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Hong said on my journey was, and I think she was quoting somebody, but I don't know who, because I heard it first from her, but she said the greatest threat to our planet is the idea that somebody else is going to save it.
Yeah.
We all have to do our part. And for me, that moment was, I can no longer say I'm a true animal advocate if I don't give up what's comfortable to me to do something about it, right? So as a filmmaker, I had to go make a film. We know everyone has their place in life.
They're calling, what they do,
what they're good at, their skill set. I just say, bring your skill set to the fight in whatever capacity. You might be a graphic designer, bring it to a nonprofit who's doing the work that you want to do, help them. Because you had this 400 strong team behind you. You couldn't do what you needed to do without that. No one does it alone. And that was the thing I was trying to say, like, no one does it in a vacuum.
Exactly.
But you will meet sisters along the way, which is what we did. I mean, the most incredible relationships, and I'm so grateful for it. And you have not only been inspirational in what you've been doing, but personally, I had an issue this year that you were, there was no one else I could call. And I'm going to get emotional, so I'll just pull back. And these are the things, it's the ripple effect of doing something that you can never factor in. You don't know if you're going to succeed. You don't know if you're going to, I'm getting emotional.
Yeah. No, I know, but we were destined to come together, and the ripple effects of all going beyond wildlife are profound and beautiful. And I'm gonna give some props to my mom, because she was watching the Today Show with Natalie Morales, right? I think that was your interview, and she called me right after. She said, "Ashley, you have to find out about this woman, Kerry David, in her film." And I mean, and who would have thought that
you hunted it down? And I loved it, and it was great, and it was instant, and you're amazing that you are so humble in it. I've met a lot of people doing incredible things, and sometimes the idea that they're doing it is bigger than the thing they're doing, and you meet that along the way, and you're the opposite of that, and you are such a phenomenal human being, and I'm so grateful to know you. It was through the fact that I wouldn't have known you had you not decided to do this incredible thing where you passed this bill, and now you are an example to other states. And I want to touch on that I know there'll be somebody somewhere watching this who will want to do it for their state. What advice do you give them, and how can they do that?
Right. So first, if I could, I'd love to just mention, I know it'll be written somewhere, but I want to give a shout out to the 12 states who've done it: New Jersey, New York, California, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New Hampshire, Minnesota, New Mexico, and Vermont. So yay. So we're number 12. I should also add that the DC, the District of Columbia, has also passed legislation, which is wonderful. So of the other 38 states, we need all 50 states to act, because right now it's great. And for the 12 states that have taken action, but history has proven that when markets close, it migrates to where there's loose jurisdictions or no laws on the books, which is the 38 other states. Right. So if you are living in one of those states, it's as simple as calling your town, your local town representative or senator. I mean, it's usually they live down the street, and it's saying, this is really important to me. Our state is not on this list, and it needs to be. And these other 12 states have done it. And look at how Vermont did it. Vermont did, again, they can copy our wording. It's great, strong wording. We have a very important weight limit for the exemptions. So the exemptions are for antiques, musical instruments, gun and knife handles, but it has to be 200 grams or less.
I'm all about shaming. I've lost all decorum with this. I'm just like, shame them. Usually I would say, don't shame people. You shame them if they buy it.
You're right. I mean, I was in a store recently that sells real fur. And I know that's something you and I are also very passionately against. And I said something very nicely. I mean, again, you can do this nicely. And I just said, can you please pass on to your buyer for this store, right here in, South Burlington, Vermont, that I am firmly opposed, and millions of other people are, to the fact that you're selling this particular brand of fur coat. And it's a very popular brand that everybody's heard of. And it's a travesty. Speaking up is really important. It's taken a long time to get to this lucky number 12. My hope is that within the next year or two, all of the states will follow. So
you are the tipping point. Yeah.
Right. And exactly. And even right off the bat, a wonderful supporter of the Vermont's effort, this incredible young woman named Tara Hetz. She and her father were huge ambassadors for this bill. They've spent most of their life in Africa doing conservation work. She's just moved to Colorado. And she called me the other day. She said, does Colorado have this yet? And I said, not yet. She's running with it. Right. And so
now, you made a very generous offer. You said that your graphic designer will allow everything that you used for marketing as a template for other states that want to try to do what you did to turn their states.
Anyone and everyone who's interested, I would love for them to visit our little website. We still have our little website. I mean, the sole purpose of Vermont for Wildlife, formerly known as Ivory Free Vermont, was to pass this legislation. So, okay, what now for Vermont for Wildlife? It is now simply to inspire others and help others. So, it took me 8 years to get a lot of these arguments and do the research. I mean, we have literally 8 years and thousands of pages of research, science documents. I mean, we have professors from the University of Vermont who've been to Africa, just really, really good stuff. So anyone can go on our website, which is www.vermontforwildlife.org, all one word, and they can email me through the website, and I will help and give information. And, you don't even know what I would have paid, 5 years ago for, a cheat sheet and, a roadmap. Yeah. Let's people give that.
So what is next for you now? Because we touched on this before we started recording, which is that you've had, for the last 8 years, this has been this massive, massive undertaking and a passion project for you and your every waking thought. And then, you wake up so that following week, you're just basking in the success and like the thrill of now protecting and saving all this wildlife. What do you do now?
I'd like to inspire kids somehow. I definitely want to do something with wildlife trafficking. And my immediate goal is to have the other 38 states enact strong legislation.
Well, my friend, I am so incredibly proud of you. I'm honored to call you a friend. And I just think that what you did was remarkable. And thank you for doing it. And I think that wraps up our interview. Thanks for spending time with me.
You're welcome, Kerry. You are so humble. And I know you just say, oh, yeah. But I will say, when I saw your film, every second that you did, and every person in your film, primarily the woman you featured, it validated every second of my blood, sweat, tears, angst, sleepless nights, trips to Montpelier in blizzards, everything. And so I remember saying to you in one of our first conversations, it was like an elixir to watch your film and just feel, no matter what happened, my effort matters, and it's for them. And so thank you for giving me that, because that gave me, maybe that's what gave me that boost in this last year.
But I will tell you, my film is called Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Line of the Poaching War. And you, my friend, are on the front line of the poaching war, and you are a huge warrior princess. So we'll leave it there. Mutual Appreciation Society over.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
So proud to call you friend. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry. Take care.